All right, Steve, I'll let you kick off the second thing of this show. What do you have on your mind?
Keeping an eye on the Bucks defense. And I thought it was very interesting. I think we all knew there would be a trade-off when it went from Jrue Holiday to Damian Lillard. And you started to feel the changes as the season wore on. And they played Atlanta, and it looked like, okay, they need to clean up some defensive coverages. There are some times where there are some switches that aren't necessarily locked in, rotations that aren't necessarily locked in. Dame switches to Giannis. Giannis is trying to hold. Trae Young, Brook is at the level. Do you want him at the level? Is the weak side in? Just some weird overall stuff. But you could probably say that's early season type behavior. Then they had the Toronto game where it just felt like things didn't feel right at all. Mm-hmm. The activity wasn't there. The effort wasn't there. The buy-in wasn't there. And what stuck out to me is the base wasn't there. So you had these possessions, and Milwaukee, obviously a team that's had Brook Lopez in a drop. But you had these possessions where Brook was kind of caught in between. Where am I supposed to be? If there's a wide pin down, he's caught in between the level and deep, and now he's getting blown by. There were possessions where they were switching some screens, but then they weren't rotating behind it. There was an uncertainty behind it, and it just didn't feel like them, and that was where I started to go, oh, this is concerning. And then Giannis, I think after the game was like, hey, we need to have some tough conversations. Defensively, we can't take everything away. And then magically, they play the Knicks to start the in-season tournament, and guess what they're back in? Brook's in a drop.
How did that turn out for Brook, by the way?
He looked like a different guy. My thing with Brook is obviously we've seen the elite defense he brought last year. He can do a lot of things defensively. I think it's just a certainty of knowing, okay, this is my role. This is my responsibility. This is why I may need to be in a drop or I come up to the level. There's a specific reason. They didn't have that in the Toronto game. And so you saw more activity against New York. You saw Malik Beasley navigating screens. You saw Dame navigating screens. You saw more help. It looked positive. But I wanted to tap in with you, JJ, for this. Because I think sometimes we talk about schemes, we talk about X's and O's. There's only so many schemes you can do. How important is buy-in from the players defensively as far as what to do defensively and what happens when it isn't working? Because I know on my end, back a long time ago when I was allowed to coach, you would throw a game plan out there and you would hear the murmurs. And you'd leave a coach's meeting and be like, I don't know about this one, but I got to sell it. So what's the player's side when things just aren't right?
It's a great question. And I think as it relates to the Bucks, I thought the same thing watching that Toronto film. It was bad, really bad. I threw away my notes from that game because I called Friday. Yeah, exactly. Because I called Friday's game. So I kind of put all of my notes in prep for that game, threw them away. But I know what I wrote down as I'm watching that game. No structure, no rules, no organization, everything random. You're watching pick and roll coverage. All of a sudden, they're forcing middle. There's no help at the nail. Brooks in no man's land. Defender gets behind him. Next time down, they force middle again on pick and roll, on a side pick and roll. This time, the low man helps off the strong side corner. They don't get rotation. They get an open three. It was so bad and disorganized. It was actually frustrating to watch. Truly frustrating to watch. And to your buy-in question, I think when you're selling a game plan and getting a player to buy that game plan, that's like 75 to 80% of it, right? Because especially if you're changing the habits, and that's an important point. You're changing the habits, something that frankly has worked for the Bucks. They've been a top 5 defense consistently with this core group. Obviously, they lose Jrue. But then to just change the schemes, particularly with a guy who was in the top 2 or 3 in Defensive Player of the Year voting last year with Brook Lopez, it's a little shocking. So I think buy-in's about 75% of it. The other part of it is, and I had coaches say this all the time, which is, I think, very poignant and very true, it's not just about being in the right coverage. It's not just about being in the right spot. It's the effort after that, right? So you can You can do the game plan right, but if it's not 100% effort, it's not going to work. An easy example of that. Remember my first year with the Clippers. We play the Lakers on opening night, and we're going to down all side pick and rolls. We're going to ice them. We're going to force them down, to the baseline, and none of us were into the ball. And so, I liked the game plan. We all liked the game plan, but we weren't into the ball. And so they're just zipping the ball around. Steve Blake's, snaking everything, and we lost, right? Next game, hey, guys, we're going to ice everything. This time we're going to be into the fucking ball. All right, that shit works. That shit works, right? So when you talk about like even a simple thing like an X on the back side, an X rotation on the back side, you say, all right, we're going to use the low man, right? We're going to have the big up, and we're going to tag with the low man. Well, guess what? The X guy can be there, but if his closeout isn't 100, you're probably giving up an open three, either on the initial pass to the corner or the swing pass to the wing. So you got to buy in, but then the effort has to be there. But the challenge to me, and it's a great question, Steve, is getting the buy-in. Because I don't think NBA players are stubborn. I think NBA players are smart. And NBA players can recognize if something works and if something doesn't work. And if you have an older group where something has worked consistently for years, and then to change that, there's going to be some growing pains. Another great example of this is my first year in Philly, we had Lloyd Pierce as our defensive coordinator. All right. We played traditional pick and roll defense, traditional help side rotation, top three defense. The next year, we implemented something called the Batman scheme, which is we're not helping with the other three guys. The five man's essentially responsible for everything. Let's not give up threes. Well, guess what? Kemba Walker got 60 on us. Guess what? We weren't in the top 5 in defense. We were like 15th that year. And we have Joel Embiid, Jimmy Butler, and Ben Simmons. Like, we should have been better defensively. And we would go to the coaches and we'd say, hey, why are we forcing pick and rolls middle? It doesn't make sense. Why are we not icing the pick and rolls? And the agreement point was never reached that season. It was never reached. And ultimately, I think it hurt us to a degree. I think when you have players on the defensive end overthinking, we talk about overthinking on offense a lot. When you talk about overthinking on defense, you're going to get beat. If you're at the point where you're like, I literally don't know what I'm supposed to do right now, I'm just guessing, you're fucked. You're fucked. Now, as it relates to the Bucks, I want to go back to this because I want to be fair. I do want to be fair. Talked to Adrian Griffin before the game. He's coming from Toronto, right? Nick Nurse, different defensive strategies, especially with that group based on personnel, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So Adrian Griffin wants a more aggressive defense. Bucks not great at forcing turnovers. He wants them, you watch these early games. Bobby Portis sometimes blitzing at about 30 feet, right? Got a couple turnovers in a couple games. So he wants the bigs more aggressive, right? What's the byproduct of trying to force more turnovers? You're going to get blown by. They're blow by numbers. Top 5 in the league last year. This year, bottom 5. Going into that game against New York. So there's a trade-off to all this stuff. And in an 82-game season, you have the luxury of figuring out what works with your personnel. And the hope is that Adrian Griffin figures out what works with his personnel. Certainly, the loss of Jrue Holiday would affect blow by numbers. I'm not an idiot. Which is why I think you have to change from an aggressive defense where Jrue is so good to what is our best bet to get a stop. We have Giannis and Brook on the back line. Let's play sound. Let's funnel everything. Let's ice everything. Let's use our size. Get the offensive players to the spot we want them, where our size can dictate some of the shot making, some of the decision making. They made that adjustment. I liked what I saw for the most part. Don't get me started on the Bucks offense right now. We're going to actually, you know what we're going to do, guys? You know what we're going to do?
The 3.5 things?
No, I'm going to challenge you guys. Shout out to you guys. You guys put an awesome video out on our YouTube channel last week, breaking down Luka Doncic and his early season success. I want you guys to do a breakdown video of the Bucks spacing on offense, because it is god fucking awful. It's awful. And as a basketball fan, it's actually frustrating to watch. Okay. That's where I'm at with the Bucks right now. That's where I'm at. One thing I want to say, I want to give a little credit where credit's due. You guys saw this. You get down the stretch, the Knicks trying to force the Jalen Brunson, Damian Lillard matchup. Jalen had it going. Those last few minutes, Dame got 2 key stops, right? He gets the block from behind, and then he forces Jalen into a tough fall away from about 9-10 feet that misses off the backboard. Dame got the stops when it mattered. Dame scored when it mattered. Give credit where credit's due.
So he's not the worst defender of all time. Got it.
No, I am. Can I just say one other thing? I'm going to say one other thing real quick. I'm going to say one other thing. Because I made a comment during the game about the in-season courts as it related to the Clippers. And it's true. I'm scrolling Twitter one day, 10 days ago, whenever it was, and I see a picture of a court that I've never seen before. And I noticed that it says, Clips on it or whatever. And there's a trophy at half court. And I was legitimately very confused, right? Because we've seen like the courts with the NBA Finals trophy on it or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was just confused because the Clippers had never won a trophy. And that's a fact. And I also admit my culpability in that in the 4 years that I was there. I have no problem admitting that I was part of the problem. Like, that's easy for me to do. And the reaction to that quote from Clippers fans, I'm like, guys, yeah, you don't need to tell me. I know. I was there. I lived it. I was in that locker room after we lost up 3-1 to the Houston Rockets. I know what that feeling's like, all right? It sucks. I know. You don't need to tell me, all right? I've lived it. I still carry it. Still hurts, all right? That's all I'm saying. I'm allowed to make that joke because I was there. That's the point.